Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thanks for stopping by. Our dedicated team will guide you through with the latest updates and theories at Starbase, Texas. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for future streams.
Hello, everybody. My name is Zach Golden, and welcome to another Starbase Weekly live stream. Happy to be here with y'all today. We got some awesome news, as I'm sure you all are slowly becoming aware of. It looks like we finally have a launch license from the FAA for the 5th flight test of Starship, which should now be taking place tomorrow morning. So that is really exciting. We're going to dig into that a little bit more. But first, I want to introduce our guest that we have with us today. So first of all, thank you, Lawrence, for joining us.
Great to be here. Great news. Can't wait for all this.
Awesome. Yeah, we also have Todd with us. I'm not sure if he's on the microphone right now, but he will be hopping in and out. If you want to say something now, Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just really happy to be here again. This is always a lot of fun. It's going to be a great show. Pictures were unbelievable this week. I can't wait for tomorrow. I know I'm not sleeping tonight like the rest of you, so let's enjoy the show and get on with the pictures.
Awesome. And for handling all the questions and donations today, we have Astro Joe with us. Astro Joe, happy to see you.
Thanks, Zach. Good to be back on with you, Todd and Lawrence. Let's enjoy the show. T-minus 18 hours. Let's do this.
Awesome. Yeah, and we're planning on having Ryan Hansen Space with us today. I actually just got done picking him up from the airport about a little over an hour and a half ago, so that was the main reason for the hour delay for starting the show today. So first of all, thank you all for your patience. And yeah, as I mentioned, Ryan may be joining us, but he has had a very long few days. I think on about 2 days ago, he was in the final works of trying to get his episode out that he just dropped yesterday, which was basically titled How SpaceX Plans to Catch Super Heavy. So if you guys haven't seen that yet, I recommend seeing that before this launch. It has some really great information that questions that a lot of people have been asking over the past 4 months or so since they first announced that this attempt was going to be happening on Flight 5. So yeah, really great resource if you guys haven't seen that yet. I believe the Everyday Astronaut has one out as well. but I know Ryan's is really in depth in technical information, so highly recommend it. I honestly wish I could just play it right now because it's really good, but I'll let you guys watch that on your own time. So, but yeah,
It is
so
really
getting
good.
into the show, we have officially gotten a launch license for the 5th flight test, and I'm not going to go through it all right now. But yeah, there is some pretty interesting information both in this and the environmental document that was released. So yeah, what we do know about this so far is that this covers, I believe, both Flight 5 and Flight 6, which is really great news. So that means that, you know, if SpaceX is probably going to be capable of doing their fastest turnaround ever, depending on the outcome of this launch. So, you know, assuming that this catch attempt goes well, there is a potential for another launch, I would say, within a month to 2 months. So that really comes down to just being able to perform all of the refurbishments that are needed. They're going to need a static fire test of at least booster 13, and then yeah, I mean, they could do a very quick turnaround. So, you know, as long as booster 12 doesn't cause any damage back at the launch site, I think it's going to be really exciting to see how quickly they're able to get this flight 6 in. But you know, we won't get too ahead of ourselves. There's some pretty good information related to flight 5 in here as well. One of the interesting things that I saw in here was related to the heat shield jettison, the hot stage ring. So it's interesting. They gave a range of about 100 to 400 kilometers where they expect it to fall offshore. I think this is, Ryan and I were talking about this on the way here. The 400 kilometers is really interesting because that's extremely far away. I think this is kind of like if the booster was being used in expendable mode. That's when it would probably end up about 400 kilometers offshore. This isn't really, you know, that large of a range of what they're expecting during a catch attempt. They did later mention in here that it was actually 1 to 4 kilometers, I believe, for the actual catch attempt. So yeah, the interesting thing about this, oh yeah, so right here is a 3 to 4 kilometers downrange of the landing location is where it's actually expected to fall. So Ryan in his episode gave a really good explanation about where it's going to come down and how they're forming the trajectory in a way that prevents it from actually returning back to the launch site, because that is a very real possibility depending on where the boost back burn is ended at. Theoretically, the hot stage ring should follow the booster wherever it goes, as long as, you know, you're not if you don't include the lift characteristics of the booster in order to actually kind of glide away from its original path, its ballistic trajectory, it theoretically should come down on the same location. But according to this document, they're expecting it to be about 3 to 4 kilometers downrange, and also to break up upon impact with the water. So that's interesting. You know, we're kind of thinking about how they would actually know that it would break upon impact, and you know, I guess you may think it's common sense given the velocity that it's going to have while it's re-entering. But I'm assuming we're kind of thinking that maybe they actually went out to investigate the hot stage ring from booster 12. So we do know that over the last few weeks, they've done some recovery missions where they've actually gone to retrieve some components from booster 12. We're going to show that here in a bit. Matter of fact, I may just jump ahead and show that while we're talking about it. So they have recovered some components of booster 12. They first got the the outer 20 engines, basically the aft skirt of the vehicle. And then after that, on their second trip, they actually went and recovered the, well, at least part of the aft dome. So don't believe the thrust puck was attached to this, but there are several of the outer 20 engines that you can see over here, and a few center engines down there as well too. This is a center engine right here. So we're assuming that while they were out there, and this is kind of based on tracking the location of the recovery ship as it was out there, we do believe that it actually went to investigate the hot stage ring as well. So with that
Yeah.
said, I think some of their information regarding like what they expect for that hot stage ring comes from analyzing what they saw with the previous one.
And just to clarify, it's booster 11, not 12. 12 is still
Sorry,
sitting
yeah,
on the mural.
yeah, my bad. You'll know I've been really bad about that lately. So, I hopefully, we'll reach a point where all the boosters get unique names or something like that. Since, they're. I guess you could say that these are unique names. So, what am I talking about? So, something more memorable that would actually help us, differentiate them. I don't know. I talk about all the different boosters so often, going all the way back from pre-flight 1 to now, that sometimes I get them mixed up in my head. But anyways, back to the point. So booster 11, that was the one that I believe they may have done some investigation on the hot stage ring from that flight, in order to kind of determine what they should expect once it actually contacts the water. So they also do mention here that it's anticipated that future improvements to the vehicles will enable SpaceX to no longer jettison the forward heat shield. And so this action is expected to be temporary and anticipated to take place approximately 20 times over the next 3 years. So that's very interesting. I think the interesting thing about this is that a lot of people have been kind of speculating that version 2 of the booster will actually have the hot stage ring incorporated into the forward section. And I don't know, I'll say that the renders that made people start to think that, a lot of things from those renders have turned out to be true, but I do think there's still some question marks left over from that render, and this is one of those items. I personally don't see how it's possible to integrate the inner stage without forcing the grid fin motors to be inside of the tank. So basically, in my opinion, the avionics computer and that grid fin motor need to remain accessible at all times. So putting a permanent structure on top of all of that has never really made sense to me. And I think that it's fair to say that this document kind of confirms that, at least on version 2, that we shouldn't be expecting an integrated forward heat shield. So, the fact that they're anticipating doing this 20 times over the next 3 years, you could argue that maybe some of those flights are going to be with boosters that are reflown. So maybe there's still a chance that we will see this integrated onto version 2 of the boosters, but I don't know. I think this probably includes all of the version 2 boosters that we should expect to see. Moving on, one of the other things that I did want to mention from this, which a lot of people definitely care about, so as it relates to kind of protecting wildlife, it looks like they're also basically, I think how this goes is you have somebody who goes out there and actually locates any nests, bird nests that are within the blast radius, I guess you could say, of specifically the deluge system and the exhaust plume, all of that steam and material that's going to be ejected outwards. So it looks like they are planning to basically identify and then find some way of protecting each of these nests. So it looks like they're considering temporary or removable sheltering objects to shield from the direct movement of gravel. So yeah, that means that I'm expecting they're probably out there right now doing some of this if they haven't already. I imagine you probably only want it to be like a covered for like a day, if that, because obviously you don't want to prevent the mothers from going and attending to their nests. So this could be one of those things that happens at midnight. They go out there knowing where all of these nests are and put some shielding over it. So that's interesting, and hopefully that makes environmentalists a little bit happier. I know it's impossible to fully satisfy them, which is understandable to some degree. But yeah, I think it's nice that they are taking steps to actually protect some of the wildlife in that area. On that note, there are some other wildlife that are going to be a little bit out of luck, I would have to say, and that is specifically the crabs, because I guess, I thought crab season was over, but apparently it's not. I saw several of them when I was down there last night. So yeah, hopefully they're mostly out of the way for this. But continuing on, I guess, Lawrence or Todd, maybe did you have anything you wanted to add as far as that Flight 5 and 6 license goes?
I think you covered most of it. I was really happy to see that, that they're going to attempt to do something to help the animals in the area. I think that's at least a cool, effort. Hopefully it works out for the animals the best possible. I just thought that was really cool that they're going to do that. Not just, oh, we know where they're at, but we're actually going to try to do something. So I thought that was good.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things that, about that environmental document that came out yesterday, actually, I don't know. I think there's good points on both sides. In my opinion, if you were trying to prevent water from entering the wetland area, this was never going to be. It was never possible to prevent that from happening without extending the boundaries of the site, and that makes a lot of sense. And to some degree, I don't know. I feel like they probably should have planned around that a little better, whether that is involved trying to get the approval to expand out into this area. Although I'm not positive, but that may require another EIS in order to do that. Or I think it was their application with the Army Corps of Engineers that needed to be approved before they can do that. But if not, expanding out into that area, then I don't know. I think maybe a flame trench from the start probably would have been a smart way to go. Typically with most flame trenches, and this is something that document kind of mentioned, most flame trenches, you're not just spraying water out in all directions. It's mostly contained within the trench. So a lot of pretty much every other deluge system, including Falcon 9, they will have some surface level deluge system, but it usually is pointed towards the opening of the trench. And that is something that the Starship, or at least Pad A, did not have. So I think there will have a lot more control over this with the new flame trench. And I think that is going to be some motivation for them to try and get it activated even quicker. So yeah, really exciting to see. I guess I shouldn't call it exciting, but it's good to see some progress in that area as far as doing something different in order to kind of alleviate some of the complaints that they've been getting as far as the system goes.
Yeah, I think what tomorrow's flight will help provide data for is going to be for the future tiered environmental assessment, which will help speed things up for Pad B becoming operational.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm equally as excited to see what happens during the launch as I am to see what happens immediately after, because typically there's a lot of things that are like frozen in place, like as far as other operations that they need to start working on that they can't until after the launch. So usually there's a mad dash the day after of like new equipment showing up and all kinds of stuff. So I'm excited to see how that goes. But we will return and discuss about Flight 5 a little bit more towards the end of the episode. For now, I'm going to go ahead and take us over to the Massie's test site, which I did kind of mostly already discuss what we are seeing over here, which is the remains of Booster 11's aft section and most of its engines. I don't remember what the total count was on the engines, and I'm not going to sit here and count them, but it looks like they did recover most of them. I think the center engines are the ones that are missing from here, and I do believe that NASA Spaceflight did a flyover of the McGregor facility over the last few days, and they did find a lot of these engines from Booster 11 at McGregor, so that's interesting. I don't know, Lawrence, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, why would they bring those ones to McGregor instead of, why split them into two different locations?
I think they just brought the remains here to process everything before they individually removed the engines and then shipped them to McGregor.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a few engines that were here last week. Those must be the ones that were shipped off to McGregor's. We noticed we couldn't find those. My thought is they're just going to pull them apart and just check and see how they go. Yeah, they hit the ocean, but they just kind of want to look at them and see what happened. And McGregor's more of a location setup for that than Starbase. So that I have a feeling we're going to see these picked off one at a time and then driven out.
Yeah, that would make sense. And I should mention, in case I didn't at the start of the show, these images are actually from Monday. So as most of y'all know, we weren't able to do a show last week due to the weather, not being able to get up and actually do a flyover. So these images were taken on Monday, and doing a show midweek was not really an option for most of us. So that's why we're doing it now. But I believe that Mauricio more than likely has a flight planned for tomorrow morning. I think it's either tomorrow morning or Monday. I believe it's tomorrow because I think he's going to want to get out there and do that flyover immediately. Especially, well, just given the possibilities of what could happen during this flyover, during the launch, he's definitely going to want to get some images as quickly as possible. So be on the lookout for that. And I don't know, I think
right after the TFR expires.
Say that again.
Flight plan for right after the TFR expires.
Okay. Do we know what time it expires?
I think it's 10-ish, 10:30-ish.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, honestly, there's a chance I may try and go with him. I just got another new camera this week that I would love to test out. I'm sure it'll be much better than the one I was using, which is primarily made for video. So I may even try to go with him if I'm able to get off of the island fast enough. But yeah, so it's going to be pretty awesome getting up there for that. And, on that note, definitely want to say we appreciate everybody's donations because that allows Mauricio to basically have that pilot on standby for these types of events. So yeah, we appreciate everybody who donates towards the show and all of the YouTube members and Patreon members because it really helps out a lot to guarantee that Mauricio is able to get up there when he needs to. So continuing on, I'm not sure what else we have really to cover at Massie's. They did move booster. Was it 13 or 12?
14.
14, Jesus. Booster 14 was moved out to Massie's to perform a cryo test, and so it basically performed 2 tests, and now it's already back at the build site. And I don't think we've seen any ship movement over the last week, though, right?
No, we're still waiting for S-33 to do its cryo whenever they get done with it. The only thing we have seen is that test tank move back.
Oh, right. Yeah, this test tank.
Yeah, test tank 16 or whatever the name of it is was rolled back this week.
Okay.
This week they also stacked the 4th level, so whatever's going there next is going to be taller, it appears, unless they're just doing final fits and putting it together. But they did stack that 4th ring, so that's also happened this week.
Okay. Yeah, I'm wondering if we're going to see a 5th one because there are. It does look like there's supposed to be another level on top of this, just given the way that this is constructed. So I don't know if that's just keeping it the option available or if they're actually planning on adding a 6th level soon. But I guess we'll find out within the coming months. Let's see. Anything else from Massie's that we should discuss?
I think that pretty much wraps up the
Yeah,
majors.
there was much week.
Go ahead, Todd.
I was just agreeing with Lawrence. Yeah, there just hasn't been that much this week, with other than the few things that we covered that we noticed, I believe.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I do see down here that they got this what we think is related to puck shot thrust puck testing for potentially a new version of the booster is down here, and it looks like they've got that flipped over and painted. But other than that, I don't really see anything else new. Before we move over to Sanchez, I will go ahead and pass it over to Astro Joe so he can cover any donations and questions that y'all might have.
I'm going to cover some amazing support with gifted memberships first from Callistia Lee gifting 5, Flipper79 Flip Diaz gifting 1, Eagle gifting 10, Wilbo Baggins gifting a membership, Just Martin gifting 5, and Rocket Prophet gifting 5 as well. Got some amazing support from Joey Bag of Donuts. $100 super chat. Thank you to the entire team, Starbase or Bust. Wilbo Baggins also with a £2 super chat. Thank you very much for that. And a question from Phil. Do you think they will try to recover the hot stage ring to see how it did from the burn and separation?
No. I mean, I guess it depends on where it lands. If anything, they may probably try to go out there and just do the same thing that they did with Booster 11s, which is just take a look at it. But I don't think there's a reason to bring it back. There's more reasons not to bring it back. I think there's a good chance that they don't expect it to be reusable in its current state, that they probably wouldn't trust using it again due to like structural weakening that occurs during that moment of ignition. So I think just given that they don't plan to reuse it, they don't necessarily have a reason to bring it back. There's also a possibility that they're just worried about the stage separation clamps becoming damaged during that hot staging event. So, obviously, I guess you could include more protection for them or something like that. But yeah, I think that could be one of their concerns. And I'm not sure about whether or not the propellant issues, as far as having enough fuel on board in order to land with that attached, whether or not that's still an issue, given some of the upgrades that we've seen to Booster 15, which we think have been applied to 14, 13, and 12 as well. So yeah, I'm not sure if the fuel capacity is still an issue, but one of those 3 items, or potentially all of them, are part of the reasons why they don't want to bring it back.
All right, works for me. Question from George M regarding the license. Do we know how SpaceX got the license now? Was it NASA that stepped in with a veto? Because net end of November, huh? Jeez, talk, Joe.
Let's see. I don't know. I'm sure it's a possibility. It is in NASA's best interest for this program to continue moving forward. So it is a possibility. I don't think there was anything related to that in the actual document itself. I mean, I'm sure there's a chance that we'll find out about it in the coming days or weeks or something like that. But as of right now, I don't think we know. Do you, Lawrence or Todd, have any opinions on that?
I think it was just FWS and the other regulatory bodies all just worked together and tried to push it as fast as possible after the Boeing hearing.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to know for sure. You could speculate multiple ways on that. And I know we love to speculate, but I just don't think we're ever going to know for sure unless something comes out well after about it, what exactly happened to make them get it done this quick.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm personally don't care as much. I'm just happy that it's happening. It's always a toss up for me whether or not I'm going to be able to make it down here based on my work schedule. So the fact that it lined up pretty much within 2 days after I started my 2 weeks off is pretty much perfect. So I can, be willing to sit through over a week of delays to launch and still be able to view it. So no complaints for me as far as, what caused them to receive the license faster than was anticipated. But, to some degree, I think they've been hinting through their actions that they were expecting it to happen sooner. Whether that's from all of the testing, the full stack testing that they've done, and also just general chopstick testing, and potentially even the fact that they've laid this crane down so long ago, may suggest that they've been expecting to receive that license sooner than what a lot of people have been believing they were going to. Oh, any more questions?
All right. Yeah, Phil just wants to add they put in the license that they asked for, or asked the other authority to speed up the process. So I guess they did.
Okay.
Last question that I have in my queue is looking towards the future. Sorry, I had to scroll up. Liam Donald, do we know what booster and ship is going to be used for IFT6? If so, what serial numbers do we think they'll go with?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just going to be the next in line, so that would be 13 and
31.
31, yeah.
Yeah, it
Uh,
appears that testing has gone forward with those as normal. It's not like when we saw in the past where they skipped a ship where that ship just sat there for a while. It appears everything's going forward with the normal testing on them.
Yeah, and 32 is the one that does not have flaps, correct? So that's the one that they'll probably end up skipping over.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're
So,
waiting
yeah,
on the Ship 31 retiling based on data from this flight.
Yeah, that's a good point. So they have not yet stripped ship 31 like they did with ship 30 in order to replace all those tiles. So that's something that will have to happen. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think they finished that in just under a month. So it could be a relatively quick process, and they have already done static fire testing with ship 31. So the tiles would be, I guess, the last remaining thing that they need to do to prepare for that flight 6.
I heard 12,000 man hours to replace the heat shield tile.
Yeah, that's insane. All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I'll go ahead and move us over to Sanchez.
Moving right along.
Awesome. So this has been my favorite subject over the past few weeks. I've loved a lot of the back and forth that we've seen on this topic, but now we finally have some real components of the next launch mount that have arrived to Starbase, which means that we can continue our speculation. And I'm really excited. This is kind of lining up really well as far as like the theories that I've kind of been talking about over the past few weeks. But before we get into that, I guess we'll just show what we have here. So these components were all delivered over the past 2 weeks. So we have two different, basically, areas of the structure. So this is what I would consider the base. It's got 4 sides and 4 corners. So these were laid out onto the pedestals in order to fit them together. And I'm assuming they have likely started all of the welding already. So that's going to be a major project, all of that welding. And I guess I'll go ahead and take a look at the aerial view so we can kind of see that a little better. But all of these joints right here that are currently rusted, those are all the areas where they're going to end up having to weld this structure together. And it's mostly on the bottom face, but that'll be below and above, like both sides is what they'll more likely do. And then I think most of the walls do not directly attach to each other. So if we look at it from above again, or sorry, from another view, you can see that there's gaps between these walls. And that's, I'm assuming we'll probably see more components go here later. I think it'll be interesting. I'm not really sure whether or not we should expect something like this, but these are basically wide enough. You know what? I should have stayed on the other image. These are wide enough, I guess, for you to have essentially legs, standoffs that raise up another structure above it. You know, so instead of just sitting the actual deck on top of this, I think it is possible that we could see 4 corners, 4 legs coming up at an angle from this in order to support the structure above. That's the only reason I could think of why they wouldn't have gotten the walls a little closer together. I do believe we're going to see something else involved with that. But I guess you could argue that something similar was kind of done with the actual launch deck sections. So let me get another angle of that. So this is one of the deck sections, I guess. And we can see that this has space for 3 hold down arms. And we have some cool images from the ground perspective, both from Starship Gazer and Jack Byers. So these are, this is some images from Starship Gazer right here that show that section from the front. And we can see that these do have locations for mounting the new hold-down arms. So these are much larger, I think, than the previous ones, and they have several different linkages. I think the other ones only had 2. These ones appear to have at least 3. So there's mounting points right here. I think let's see a side view as well. Yeah, so we can see a side view right here. There's another mounting point right here and above right there. So 3 different linkages. And one of the important things about this is something that I've kind of been expecting and talked about over the past few weeks. These do not have cutouts for the Raptor cuties. So that's not to say that they won't add them later. But this seems to be a lot more developed than the first launch mount. So what I mean by that is most of these components that are in here would not have been included on the first launch mount. So the all of these additions up here for where the different linkages are going to attach, these were added on site with the first launch mount. Like this would have been fabricated on site as well too, and all of these holes were drilled and reamed on site as well too. So this is far deeper into its fabrication process than the first launch mount was when it arrived. And with that said, I don't think there's any reason not to have cut out the holes here for those Raptor QDs if they were going to have them. That just creates more work. And you know, it's not necessarily in a controlled environment per se, like they had in the actual when they were constructing it. So yeah, I do think it's safe to say that we're not going to see the Raptor QDs on this structure. And another thing that kind of points to that, I would say, the amount of space that's required for all that pipe work, I don't know if it could fit through just like to install all of that pipe work through this hole and basically around the perimeter of the structure. I don't think it's reasonable. Let me see if this image from Jack Beyer kind of shows it as well. I think this is a different section here. Let's see. That other image was actually better for the point that I was trying to make. Yeah, I mean, I think everything within this area right here, you wouldn't want any pipe work in there because it's gonna conflict with the motion of the arms, and we don't know exactly how they fold back, but they could end up taking up space in this area. So I think more than anything, you want to leave this open for access to be able to move through the structure. But I don't know. I suppose it is possible to fit those pipes in here. I just don't see it as what's going to happen. I think, you know, reducing the space that you have to install all of that doesn't really make sense. So in my opinion, I don't think we'll see Raptor QDs, and that's kind of what it looks like to me, is that this is not really designed for that. So with that said, I do think it's more likely that we'll see that functionality happen with the booster QD, and whether that's with one booster QD or multiple is remain to be seen. But yeah, I mean, removing those components from inside of here makes a lot of sense, and it reduces the complexity a lot. And one of the other reasons that I don't think we'll see smaller mechanical pipes inside of here is because they may need all of that space for water pipes. So one of the other things that we've seen, which I forgot to pull up an image of, but we can see it fairly well in the aerials. We do have some components up here, which are, you can kind of see right on through the side of this right here. These are basically the equivalent of the pancake for the deluge system on pad A. So this is expected to be for the upper deck. So they'll have a deluge system spraying out from the top deck, and then they'll also have water spraying out inside of the flame trench, which again makes this a lot more similar to pretty much every other launch pad out there. Most of them use rainbirds, so this will still be unique in a lot of ways, but they all still have some sort of cooling on the deck. And so, you know, it's possible that what we'll see here is the this mounted directly on top of the base. However, I don't know. I think there'll be some standoffs that create some separation between the two of them, and potentially just plates mounted on top of this. So another thing that we maybe should see, possibly, given how these openings go through, basically they line up straight through the actual structure. I think there's a chance that we could see water pipes installed in here as well, although it would be a bit difficult to get them in there once with these corners in place. So I maybe would expect that they would have already put those pipes in there before the corners were installed in order to make it easier to slide them through. But very interesting structure. I think one of the giveaways when we first saw these that we should still expect to see 20 clamps is that they do have sections for each of those clamps right here. And that's not to say that the clamps are going to come down into the structure. It's just how the supports line up. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 for each side. So still 20 clamps on the outside. And that lines up, they line up perfectly with the openings for the clamps on the upper part of the deck. So yeah, it's very, very interesting. And I think this is going to reduce the complexity quite a bit. I think if we'll probably see all of I say we'll see it, but this time around they're kind of doing things from behind a large gate, so it's hard to actually see any of this stuff unless it's from the aerial perspective. But I imagine all of the hydraulic components will go in between these sections instead of, being within these boxes right here. So yeah, this is really exciting. We do have some cool renders of this from Chrome Kiwi, which I'll show here. So this is basically showing what that structure looks like if they just place them right on top of each other. So you have the square base, but you do have still the circular opening, which the booster will be. The engines will basically be right near the bottom of this platform, actually. That's about where they'll end up sitting. But looking at it from this angle, you can also see the plates for that deluge system, which are right on top. So this is a lot simpler, and where the water is going to come in from is going to be the interesting part, because you're probably going to want to feed it from multiple locations, similar to what they did for the blast surface on pad A. So that's why I'm kind of thinking that we'll see a large circular water pipe inside of the table, instead of like a manifold on the outside of the table. So, but as you can tell, when you just look at it from down here, this allows it to be easily movable. I think a lot of folks have had questions on that, just given the size of all of these components, whether or not something like this could even be moved on the highway. And I mean, the simple answer is it has to be able to be moved, because they're constructing it at Sanchez, so at some point they have to move it to the launch site. As far as whether or not it'll be constructed in 2 pieces, I think it's safe to say that that's not the case. The foundations that they constructed for these corners was for a foundation for an extremely heavy structure. So they, in my opinion, do plan to fully assemble it right in this location. And with that said, it has to be movable. So I think right now it's a bit difficult to say. I'd have to compare some SPMTs to see how wide they are. But it does look like, in my opinion, that you could fit 3 SPMTs side by side potentially here. And if not, they'll probably have some sort of support structure going across them that supports the middle of it. But yeah, I think, as long as you're spreading out the weight over all of those axles of the SPMTs, then the weight is not necessarily an issue. And this is not, while it is a heavy structure, it's still not going to be that far exceeding the weight of the first launch mount. And also the tower sections are pretty heavy. and the previous way that they moved boosters with the transport stands plus all of the counterweights on it was pretty heavy as well too. So I don't think it's going to be an issue of the road actually being able to support this structure. So one way or another, it has to move at least once, and therefore, in my opinion, I do think we should probably expect it to be interchangeable, kind of as I've been saying since the start. So I think this is perfectly designed for that. That's part of the reason it has a rectangular base, in my opinion. And this is basically perfectly square like this so that it can go over the flame trench. I imagine it'll probably be driven up a ramp or something like that, and then laid down on top of pedestals that are probably about the same height as these. So the question, I guess, from there is how deep that flame trench is, because this will put the booster kind of close to the ground. You won't see underneath it anymore unless it's a view from inside the flame trench. But that's not necessarily an issue. I mean, it makes things a lot more interesting, that's for sure. As far as stacking operations goes, you're pretty much lifting it off a transport stand and moving it over, because it won't be the top deck won't be that much higher than the actual transport stand. I'm going to take a pause here because I'm sure we probably have questions on this structure. But before, one thing I'll mention, the other sign, as far as, a lot of people were expecting there to be maybe only 4 pedestals for the booster to actually sit on. I think the big sign that this, and I always say that there's signs of what we should expect long before it actually happens. I think it's kind of been clear that they were going to go with 20 clamps from the beginning, because they're still constructing 2 other transport stands. So if they weren't planning to have 20 hold down clamps anymore, then they probably would have scrapped these a long time ago, instead of continuing their actual construction. So yeah, those are some of the signs that we look for when we're trying to actually predict certain features before we actually see the final product. All right, let's take some questions, Astro Joe.
All right. Well, first I want to thank Rocket Prophet for a $50 super chat for a perfect Flight 5. Godspeed, SpaceX, and Flight 5. Thanks for that support, Rocket Prophet. Along with Sharpie, $10 super chat funds for Sunny and Plane Fuel. Got a question from Jim. I'm sorry, I'm not going to pronounce that. Does anyone know where the launch mount pieces were manufactured?
There was a manufacturer's tag on some of these sections when they were being shipped. I didn't check to see what that location was. Although I wouldn't be surprised if it was the same spot where they construct the tower sections. I mean, it's just a steel fabrication mill, so I imagine it may be at the same place. But I'm not positive on where it's at. Lawrence, have you seen anything about that?
I just know the tower base and stuff was manufactured by Prospect Steel, I believe is the name of the outsource.
Okay.
All right. No general question in my queue, but a lot of chatter in chat regarding the possible mobile mount. Will there be any mobile testing of booster at Massie's?
No. So the purpose of this is not for transporting boosters. It's not for constant movement like the one for Massie's is. The goal is basically that this structure should be far out of the way of the plume. So for one, if we take a look at this again, ideally the plume won't actually touch this. So you're really only worried about this area up here for the most part, and then you have your water system spraying into the zone. So I think you're kind of protecting it more in that way. But by having no legs on this as well too, you're kind of reducing the amount of damage that could happen to the structure. However, eventually, sorry about that. Eventually, the upper deck, through, let's say, 10 or more, hopefully more, pad avoidance maneuvers. The upper deck, even with that water spraying out of it, is still going to have some erosion. So at some point, this will need to be like they're going to have to replace parts of the structure, whether that's the actual water cooled plates on the top, or if it's, you know, wall panels. Hopefully it's not wall panels. More than anything, I think it's going to be that upper deck that eventually needs to be replaced. And with something like that, you can't just keep adding plates on top of it like they do currently, because then you'll block the holes in the top deck. You know, so once it reaches that point where it does need refurbishment, I think that's basically the only reason why it would actually move back and forth. Hopefully that answered the question. I may have gone on a bit of a tangent there.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of questions addressing that, and I think you pretty well nailed it. Darth, anything?
Yeah, I've always suspected that this would just be after like 5 to 10 launches, like Zach said, hopefully more. When they need to move it, they just swap them out.
Right.
Kal-El asking, do you think there's a possibility that the quick disconnect on the booster may need to be moved?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I don't think it's that big of an issue. I think you could just turn the booster around backwards and it would be fine. The only thing that needs to change would be the mounting points for the ship on the interstage, and some of the other things that line up, like the Raptor QD vent, the Raptor QD vent on the ship, where that interacts with the top of the booster, may need to be moved. But I don't think turning it around would actually be that big of a deal. Yeah.
All right. Last question I've got is from Liam Donald. Do we think that there will be a sliding rack similar to the static fire stand?
More than likely. I mean, if we just look at it really quick, I'll get a different view here. Yeah, so I think a possible sliding rack could either go in this. I think they're planning on having a somewhat of a retention pond here, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm not sure if it's actually supposed to be further out once they get the land swap approval. But I imagine that if they have a sliding door, it'll probably come out into this area right here and then retract over it like that. So that would mean having a ramp on this side leading up to it.
Yeah, from what we saw for the plans, the retention pond should be in that corner.
Right. Cool. Any more questions, or should we move on?
I just got one unrelated to anything launch site related, but from the coffee enthusiast. Do we think there will be a jellyfish tomorrow at launch?
No, I think that at least 2 of the launches got off exactly when they were expected to. And we didn't see that on those flights, so I don't think that we will. The sun will be coming up pretty quickly after the launch.
Yeah. Well, sunrise and sunset is much different, even though I'm in the same time zone, much further north up here, so I'm not exactly sure on the timing of that.
Yeah, so sunset is at 7:03. Let's see, sunrise is at 7:26. So I guess if they launch exactly at 7, then that's gonna be interesting. It may possibly still be dark when it's coming back down. I'm hoping for a slight delay, like 30 minutes to an hour, so that the sun will be up, because it's a little difficult filming at that time when the lighting is changing constantly. Cool. I guess we'll go ahead and move on then. So elsewhere at Sanchez, they are still working on the chopsticks. So both the chopsticks and the carriage are receiving a lot of love. You can see that there's scaffolding up all over the arms, and basically they're doing the same thing that they did for the first set of chopsticks, which was adding a bunch of extra structural supports onto all of the weld seams and in the corners up here. So you can see that they've stripped the paint and all that. They still have a good stack of steel down here, which hasn't been installed yet. So I'm guessing they're kind of taking their time with this, but they're at least set up to do that. They're also doing something similar with the carriage arms. I'm not 100% sure what they're doing on the carriage arms.
Yeah, we know they added some bracing to those as well.
Okay. Yeah, I was searching for another image that shows the carriage arms a little better. Yeah, so they it looks like they may be doing some of the mechanical work as well too, although that may just be a walkway right there. Yeah, that's just a walkway. Was that walkway there previously?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so basically getting these prepared for installation, which no idea when we should expect that to actually happen, but it's easier to do all this work on the ground than it is up in the air. But you know, they're going to want to do it sooner rather than later since they have that crane on site. They're not going to want to have to wait for, or they won't want the crane sitting around doing nothing, although it does still have a few big tasks that it can do in the meantime. Let's see. So over here we have the QD arm, which is the ship QD arm, which is under construction right now. So they're making some pretty good progress on that. And again, this is, at least for now, looking very similar to the one on Tower A, which is, I mean, it's pretty much identical as far as the shoulder of the arm goes. So whatever is different, possibly related to version 2 of the ship or booster, sorry, specifically the ship, will probably come on this extended piece right here, which we haven't really seen any parts of that arrive yet, I don't think. No. Yeah, so nothing related to that yet. I'm assuming in the coming weeks we'll probably see the attachment for that arm arrive. What else?
Yeah, we saw a new jig being it fabricated over on the right there.
Should I go back to that other image?
Yeah, the closer with the transport stand.
This one?
Oh, I was talking about the Star Factory jig up in the near the
Oh,
road.
okay. Are you talking about this one?
Yeah.
This is, they've already made one of these before, right? This is the second one?
Third, I believe.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
don't
we
think
know
we ever figured out for sure what it was, but we assumed it was for booster aft sections, right?
Yeah, I believe that's what we were speculating on.
Right. Yeah, great to see all this stuff happening for the Star Factory. And I think one of the big things that I'm personally waiting on, which I'm not sure if it exists yet, would be something to allow them to. I think they need a turntable for the ship uh, payload bay section. So I think the only reason that they're still stacking the nose cones onto the payload section inside of the high bay is because they're still waiting on a structure that will allow them to do it inside of the Star Factory. So I believe they're already capable of lifting the nose cones with the cranes in the factory. I mean, that sounds like the easiest thing. It's just the same lifting mechanism that they use in the high bay. But I don't think they have the actual turntable necessary for that yet. So turntable, welding station, all that stuff, probably still missing. Moving on, let's see. Not sure if there's anything else at Sanchez we really need to cover. They do have all of their transport stands and stuff over here still. So we have the booster cryo station, transport stand, obviously. This is the is this a ship cryo station? Yeah. And I thought they had the static fire test stand here. Where did they move that to?
That
Oh,
was
that was
back
at Massie's. Yeah.
Yeah, and you'll notice B4 is finally gone, as well as nose code 41, I believe it was.
Oh, yeah. Those were down. It was Booster 4 down in this area right here?
Yeah, there's the transport stand next to your area there.
Right. So I guess that's next to get scrapped.
The whole scrapyard has been significantly cleaned up, and I know it led to some speculation in the show and tell as to were they just actually scrapping because they're finally catching up, or are they planning on doing something in that area and they need to get it cleaned up for further plans and projects going on. So it'll be interesting to see as it goes along here, the next flyovers and what else happens there, because the whole area is just much cleaner.
Yeah. You know, one thing I'm definitely expecting is that you know, if this does end up being interchangeable, they'll probably have between 4 to 6 of them between the two launch sites. So I think at least this space right here needs to be available in the future for them to be able to bring these into this location in order to work on them. So yeah, I'm expecting that we'll see something like that in the future. But other than that, I can't really think of what else they would put here, because we do know that as far as like air separation plants or something like that, that we're expecting that to be at the launch site. And I mean, I imagine a larger storage tent potentially at some point, although I wouldn't be surprised if they have storage inside of the Star Factory now. So cool. Anything else from Sanchez that we need to talk about? Nothing really in this. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I'm sure some of y'all have seen this by now, but over the past 2 weeks, SpaceX has been putting up these panels on the outside of the parking garage, which is very interesting. I think it was confusing people at the start, but now we know exactly what that's for. Over the past few weeks, past week, they've been unveiling this, and I could be wrong, but I think what they did here is these are numbered panels, and each of them has to go in a specific spot, and then they peel off the outer layer of it. Because I was kind of watching it when I was out there yesterday, and I didn't see them putting panels up. It looked like they were taking the outer layer off. So we can see now, as of this morning, what that looks like, thanks to Mary from NSF. So this is really cool. Large mural, and this is basically one of the shots from the Starship presentation when they showed all the ships going to Mars. So this is really cool that they have this up here.
I think it's funny they depicted ship version 1.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, the funny thing, this really just changes everything when you go down there. Like, you know, it's been last time I was down there, this parking garage didn't exist. Most of the Star Factory, a lot of the Star Factory didn't exist, and the second tower didn't exist. But everything looks completely different now, and you get kind of confused on exactly where you're at when you're driving around sometimes, because it just looks so different. But this was one of the biggest things as you're driving up to it. To see this is pretty incredible. But I'm wondering if we may see other things on different parts of the building, because they do have scaffolding up. Like, there looks like they may put paneling up elsewhere. But yeah, kind of waiting to see what they're doing underneath all of the scaffolding. So continuing on, I'll take us. Uh-oh. That was weird. There's not really much to show in front of the high bays. All the doors were closed, so I'm going to skip us over to the Star Factory. But yeah, at the Star Factory, they have been doing a lot of work, not moving super fast, but they're still making progress with this extension for the Star Factory. They're slowly making their way and closing in all of this space. And they did tons of work on the actual roof this week. So they cleaned up the roofs so they're actually white again, which makes this building look a lot nicer, that's for sure. And they kind of did the same thing down on this end. They finished up installing most of these roof panels except for in the corner down here, but I think that's been completed by now. Yeah, tons of progress on this, and for some reason a lot of people still get confused on what this part of the structure is actually for, and I think it is pretty clear that this will be obviously an extension of the factory, but like the actual assembly part of the building and not just an open floor space. So we do have bridge crane rails that come all the way down to this area. So yeah, this adding a pretty good of square footage onto the actual manufacturing space in the building. And I guess until this roof is done, we won't see them. We probably never will actually see them take down all of the paneling inside of here. And this is basically just for helping to keep the HVAC contained within the building, because it's still really hot down there, really humid. So having a nice workspace is probably really helpful when you're doing all of this interior work. Beyond that, they're still working on the mechanical space up here. It looks like they've gotten some they're preparing to do the actual walls down here, so probably won't be able to see into there for much longer. And then I guess the last part of the outer paneling that they still need to do for this part of the building is just this area right here, which they're getting close to finishing as well. Let's see. Lawrence, did you have anything you wanted to add onto this topic?
I'm just glad to see that it's finally progressing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they've gotten the foundations here for the other columns finished up. I think they're maybe missing two of them right here, possibly. But we should probably see these go vertical soon. I think they have most of their steel, a lot of the steel for it, not all of it, but a good amount of it just waiting down here to be installed. But it's getting tight. I can imagine. I think we'll probably see them fill in this spot down here first and then work their way back out from here. I don't see foundations. I can't tell if they're right here up against this wall or not. Yeah, I don't see them there yet.
I can't remember for sure, but I thought we saw him just a little bit off the wall. It was kind of confusing at first, if that was the spot I'm thinking of.
I was hoping I had another angle that would show it, but I don't think I do.
Lawrence, do you recall the pictures we saw in the past where there was something on that side? Or was it connected to the side footings, or was it off?
Yeah, it looked like they had the same side footings as the original Star Factory, where we saw them sticking out the side.
Like over here?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see them there.
Did they start digging that out?
Sorry, let me go back to that. Where at?
To the left in the shadows, you can kind of see right before the corner. It looks like it was dug out there. So, to the left, right there, that area.
Yeah, it does look like it kind of almost goes under the building a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking that one thing that we didn't see over here, like we did in the other buildings, was all of the groundwork for the electrical. So maybe they could be adding in that right now. Which makes sense because I don't think they've filled in anything between the actual columns, so they still have room to do all of that groundwork for the electrical once the roof is on. Cool. Do we have any Star Factory related questions?
I don't, but had one from earlier for Sanchez. After Pad West, or Josh Armstrong asks, after Pad West construction completes, to what extent do you expect Sanchez to be repurposed for production What do you expect to see there? Mega bays, ring yards?
Yeah, I guess I kind of explained that already. But oops, wrong image. Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, at least one thing we may see would be an area to work on more of those launch decks. But other than that, I'm not really sure. I don't think they're going to be tearing down the first tower. I think that most of the work that they're going to need to do for to retrofit Pad A will probably be related to the launch mount itself. So other than that, we will have another rocket garden near the front of the site at some point. So that could be in this area right here. As far as we know, they still plan to move the rocket garden closer to the highway. So that'll probably be at least something that we see over in this area. As far as mega bays go, I don't think it would make sense to have one in Sanchez. If anything, we'll probably see one in place of where the high bay is currently, and I do believe it'll be wider and deeper and taller than all of these structures.
Yeah, I just don't see them to be able to rapidly reuse without a larger building to refurbish and repair both ship and boosters than what they currently have now. I expect something much bigger or multiple the same size somewhere in this area.
I agree.
All right.
Agreed.
I've only got two questions pending left in my queue, but they are for the launch site. But I do have Crane Man asking, who I believe to be directed at those of you who are down there. Are you prepared for much louder sonic booms watching the booster return?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we don't really have anything to compare it to unless you've seen like Falcon Heavy or Falcon 9 in person. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for it. I don't think it's going to be anything like crazy, given that I've experienced two of them before. So
I can't wait to hear it. But yeah, I'm all clear. You're good to proceed.
cool. There isn't really much to talk about in the village, so I'm gonna skip over that today. Plus, I think it may have closed out of that image somehow. So let me just go ahead and close it. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and move us over to Pad A, where I would say things have stalled slightly, and that's probably just leading up to this launch. So number one, they've laid down the CC 8800 and removed the jib sections from it, which kind of makes sense. I don't think they really need anything else at the top of the tower that they can't either bring up with an elevator or do some other way. So yeah, I think more than anything, this will be used for the QD arm and the installing the chopsticks, which doesn't require that configuration that it was in previously. But as far as the actual tower and launch mount goes, or the flame trench, it looks like they have definitely started some of the work to remove all of this material down here. They're definitely moving slow with it though, but now we can finally see some of the CFA pilings sticking out of the ground. So there's a level of them that are a little bit higher up right here, and then you can see at least one down here, and I think this is two of them right here. Let me look at it from another angle. Let's see. Nope, not the one I want. Here we go. Yeah, so you can see some of them down in here. There's two rows of them going along this this part of the commodities trench, and then you have some of them back here, and I'm guessing they're spread out throughout this entire area. Oh, you can see a bunch of them in here as well too. So I guess after the launch, we'll see that excavation work pick up quite dramatically, and it'll be really interesting to see how deep the actual trench goes. I do think that we're probably expecting most of it to be a portion of it to be below ground and a portion of it to be above grade. I think it makes more sense to have them as much of it below ground as possible because of the sheet piling walls that they have up here. So I think we may see them crop these down quite a bit in order to reach a lower level, but it's possible that part of the trench will be above ground as well too, and then just have a ramp leading up to it for the booster to the launch mount to be able to go over this area right here. So did y'all want to add anything about this trench? This is my first time really looking at it this morning.
Yeah, we saw where they cut the sheet piles to provide better access for the commodity trench there.
Yeah. And they've done some other work related to that as well too. I know they poured some concrete down here for like a concrete culvert, which I'm not seeing
Yeah.
though.
It's right above your mouse.
Oh, it goes
That's it.
across like this.
Yeah, they've been leveling that whole area out as well.
Trying to get a better angle of it. That's not going to work. I don't think I have one that shows it from that angle. This is probably the closest you can get to it right here. Okay, yeah, so you can see that trench coming out right here. And then there's another one going in right here.
Yes.
Yeah, it looks like they've also poured concrete for part of the roof structure right here, where the drawworks will end up going. Actually, the drawworks will be on this side, correct?
Correct. And the dead stuff should be on the other side.
Right. Yeah, other than that, they've also still working on running all of their conduit from these little boxes right here over into this area. Most of it is completed in between the box and the actual tower, but still got a ton of groundwork left to do. And I think they still had CFA pilings laying around here that they were still working on. Yeah, this looks like some rebar for CFA pilings. So still a lot more groundwork to do. I think one of the biggest things that we'll see over the next few months is a massive amount of concrete and rebar work. So I think the rebar crews will probably be arriving soon, especially once this excavation work is done, because there's going to be a ton of rebar and form work in order to construct this. I imagine it will be a lot more than what people are probably expecting currently. But that's going to be a lot of work, plus whatever happens above surface as well too. I think they may not be done with all the pilings that will be supporting any other structures that will also be installed up here.
Yeah, we saw the CFA start working next to the crane there for the what we expect to be the deluge farm.
Right here.
Yeah, in that all that area.
Wasn't it the farm supposed to be back a little bit further?
Actually, I believe it's up there if you look at the plans.
Okay. Yeah, massive amount of work left to do. I mean, they've made a ton of progress in between the last two flights, but still got a ton left to do, and I'm honestly really excited for watching this continue. And as far as that, I do want to talk about that ramp though. So given how wide this road is, I think it's pretty much perfectly designed for having something as large as that structure move through the gate right here. Although I wouldn't be surprised if they actually end up expanding it a little bit. But yeah, that should be able to fit through here. And then I think we'll end up seeing a ramp kind of curve around like this, leading up to the actual tower. And then obviously for the second tower, they'll need something similar as well too, but they got a little bit longer of a runway leading up to that one. Moving on, I'll take us over to, okay. Stand by for just a second because it looks like some of my images seem to have closed out. Yeah. Give me 1 second. Gotta love when this happens. I've been kind of struggling with this stuff over the last few episodes. I haven't really had time to figure out what's causing this issue to happen. I think it's just opening so many images at the same time is probably part of the problem. But moving over to so many screens open in the background. So moving on to the orbital tank farm area, one thing that we've been kind of keeping our eyes on over the last few weeks was this work happening down on the what we used to call the Lego pad, which is where all of the GSE tanks were. So they've completed digging this rectangle out of the concrete, and I believe you can see the CFA piles in here, the rebar sticking from the CFA piles. So basically they're creating a foundation, most likely for more storage tanks, horizontal tanks. As of right now, I don't think we really know what those may be used for, because in its current state, this farm is able to support a launch. So I'm not sure what else they may be adding down to here, but I guess one thing I wouldn't be surprised to see would be a large helium storage. So I guess this depends on if they're continuing to use helium still. As of right now, we do know that these are labeled as helium tanks down here, but there's a chance that they could move away from helium. But a large potential gaseous storage of either helium or something else down here instead of using these tanks would be one thing I could see. That would just get this further away from the ramp, so it's kind of lower to the ground and a little bit more protected. Yeah, I'm not sure if those would require the kind of supports that this structure is getting.
What they're used for, I'm not sure, but we still have those 2 tanks at Sanchez that were delivered that have been sitting there next to the tower or the mount building area. But we also have 2 more tanks. I believe they were inbound this week, possibly next week. 2 more of the large tanks that appear to be on the shipping manifest that were coming into Brownsville for SpaceX. So we got more tanks coming in around. So I don't know what we're looking for, but they're coming.
Yeah, for sure. This looks a little bit small for, I mean, I guess those 2 at Sanchez could fit here, but I wouldn't expect to see like large hot dog tanks in this area because I don't think you can get them over the pipe work. I know.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. And getting those in here at all is going to be quite a challenge. I'm imagining the crane will probably have to lift from over here over the tank, all of the pipe work and whatnot. All right, and moving on. Finally, oh sorry, was there anything else about the tank farm? I know that were they starting some pilings down here? I see that they got something going on down here.
Yeah, they had started pile over there as well.
Okay. Yeah, so we may see additional tanks down in this area potentially. Okay, so moving on to the orbital pad, which again, I'm going to have to go open that one up, I guess. Crazy amount of windows. Yeah, this is the main event for this week. As we said at the beginning of the episode, we are expecting the launch. Have just a 30-minute launch window as far as I know. So that means that it'll definitely be up by 7:30, which a bit sad given that the sun doesn't come up until 7:30. So it'll be still a little bit dark out, but I guess may have a cool sunrise going at the same time. Yeah, we're expecting this very early tomorrow morning, and it will be the first catch attempt. They've been doing a lot of preparation work for this, so obviously everything that they've done with the chopsticks, all the extra protection that they've installed on the actual water deluge tanks. They've also been doing some additional work on the tower currently, which I'm actually going out there to check out here as soon as this show is over. I got a good image right here from Starship Gazer which shows this fairly well. So over the last few days, they've started adding additional cladding onto the tower, which you can see right here, because it's a lot darker than the material that's already been burned. So this is basically, I think they've gone up another level from here as well too. And they may have also done it, I think, on the other side as well too. On both sides, they're increasing the height of the cladding, which is really awesome. I just kind of hope that they end up painting the whole thing one day. But we are, of course, eventually expecting them to go all the way up to the top of the tower. But I think this is more related to protecting the tower during this catch attempt. So, even though the booster is going to be caught way up on the tower, the engines may still be doing a lot of movement when it comes to making those final adjustments for landing. So there is a chance that they could turn enough to actually send the plume through the tower. So I think that what they're kind of doing here is adding some additional protection for the pipework. Like I said, as of right now, I think they've only gone up 3 levels. But like I said, I'm personally going out there to observe and check out the final launch preparations as soon as this is over. But yeah, very interesting because they've had so much time leading up to this point to actually install those. So it is a bit confusing why they're only doing it now. But I think talking to Ryan before the show, and we think this may be something related, like that they got asked to do as part of their launch license. Further protection for the GSE and the actual tower. So I'm not sure whether it makes sense for the FAA to care about that. I'm just surprised that it's taken this long to actually do it.
Yeah, one thing I
thought they had cladding for the whole tower on site. I don't remember what happened to that. But sorry, Lawrence, what were you about to say?
Oh, I was just going to say it was great that this flyover took place right after the partial field test that they did on Monday.
Yeah. Yeah, I know another thing they're doing right now, there's a few wind services lifts down here. You can see one right here, but I think currently they may still be working inside of the tank. They were at the start of the show. They may have finished by now, but they're definitely working on that last minute preparations. I'm excited because once I get out there, I'm sure I'll be able to hear the tank farm spooling up because they do a lot of purging of the tanks and the engines for like 12 hours leading up to the launch. So things get really exciting during that time. Probably see like a activation of the detonation suppression system, among other things as well too. But final minute launch preparations are all underway, and really, really excited to see this go off tomorrow. Was there anything that I did not touch on right here? Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty much just been getting everything ready for tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
I'm not seeing much that we missed. I think we got most of the big stuff. I mean, there's little things like the trucks cleaning out the settling pond over there, but that's not really a big deal. I think for the most part, we got a lot of it.
Yeah, because they did do that deluge test a few days ago, right?
Yeah.
I think they're cleaning this out because they don't want it to overflow during the launch. And we do also know that they're most likely going to use it during landing as well too. So that'll probably fully empty these tanks during the process. Over the last few days, we've also seen them obviously filling up these tanks. I think all of these ones are just specifically for draining this. But they're ready to go. Astro Joe, did we have any final questions or donations?
Yeah, sure do. I want to thank Construction Zone for $5, 5 for Flight 5, they say. Event Dudes, since we do have a lot of questions on the Sonic Boom, says 10 PSF is expected at South Padre Island versus 2.7 PSF of a Falcon 9 sonic boom. So 4 times louder. Great show as always, he says. PSF, is that pounds per square foot or PSI did they mean perhaps? I'm not sure.
I think it's PSF. I'm not positive.
But yeah,
Pounds per
so
square foot.
basically, lots of questions on the sonic booms. Will SpaceX be measuring the decibels at different rates, different lengths? Will the sonic booms break windows at South Padre Island? Things like that.
I think that they've stated that they're not expecting that to happen, but obviously any damage that occurs away from the launch site, they're definitely going to take note of. That'll be part of their evaluation process.
All right. Liam Donald asking, where do we think the launch mount will be positioned relative to the tower? Will it be on the corner similar to OLM-1?
Yeah, so it should be basically kind of centered, or not centered, a little off center from the tower. So, I mean, it'll basically go right in this location. Yeah, I think it'll end up right on the corner right here.
All right. Question from Liam Donald related to that. On the trench, are we expecting the plume to exit both sides?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty safe to say that it's going to exit both sides. I think the side that exits towards the highway is a little bit interesting. After driving by it yesterday, I was having a hard time imagining a plume moving over the location where I was standing. But yeah, I think that's probably what we're going to be expecting. The more the better. I mean, if it was a 4-way trench, that would probably be even more ideal. But yeah, I mean, it's basically going to go up and out over this area.
All right. I want to thank Jeff S. Jones for a $4.99 super sticker, and the Alder $5 super chat. That's my lunch money. Sonny gets my sausages. Thanks for that. Torsten Gaddick on that cladding picture. On the OLT1 is a black thing on the harbor side in the height of the SQD. Is that also cladding?
I don't see any cladding up here. I don't know if he's talking about right here, but that's just a shadow. There's no cladding underneath the SQD.
I think it might be just slightly below the SQD that's in question. Whoa, hey, we just lost your stream.
Yeah, well, my screen just died, so sorry about that, y'all. I guess I ran out of battery on that thing. Let me go ahead and switch it over. I'm not really sure why that happened.
Yeah, if they're talking about the backside of the tower, we know they have the black shielding from the cable stay tray, the cable chain for the chopsticks.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it just completely exited out of what I was showing. Let's see. My secondary screen just died. I'm not used to having to pay attention to the charge on that thing. I'm in mobile mode. Sorry, Lawrence, what were you saying?
I was just saying, if they're talking about the black shielding on the backside of the tower, we know that's from the cable chain tray that moves up and down with the chopsticks.
Right. Cool. Any more questions?
Indeed. Mahmoud Ahmad asking, will grid fins be able to support the weight of booster if load points miss the rails?
That's funny. Yeah, we get asked this pretty much every week, and I think we've kind of agreed that they're not necessarily meant for that kind of weight. I don't necessarily know if they would break off, but I don't know. I think the likelihood of it landing on the grid fins is extremely low. I mean, they're going to do a functionality test on the chopsticks during the ascent phase. So I think they'll be well aware of whether or not they're going to end up doing what they need to do. And then after that, it's just up to the booster to get in the right place at the right time. And I given that the chopsticks are basically going to make contact with the side of the booster, I think the likelihood of landing on the grid fins is extremely low.
Agreed.
I do recommend, like I said at the start of the show, if y'all haven't already, to check out Ryan Hansen Space's new video that kind of explains the ins and outs of everything related to the first catch attempt, because it's really, really informational. I think lots of those questions are kind of answered really well there.
Absolutely. That was incredibly informative video. I highly recommend it to everybody. Many Rocketry is asking, do we know if the last tower section has finally been filled with concrete?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. Because they still have. Actually, they moved the. It's on the other side of the tower. So they still have the concrete pipe going up to the top. From this image, it's a bit difficult to see. It looks like there's a break right here. So I don't know. They may not be all the way up to the top yet. It's a bit dark in a lot of these images, so it's kind of hard to see where it's actually going, and especially on that side of the tower at the time of day.
Yeah, especially since this is almost a week old image. So can't wait to see what Mauricio gets tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it looks like there's a break right here to me. So I would say at minimum they're up to this level. Possibly just 1 to 2 more to go.
Yeah, I'd say so. I want to thank Pal9000 for a €11.99 super chat. Says great update. Thank you for that support. And just a couple more questions, but just want to remind everybody, please smash that thumbs up before you go. Question from Respect. How do we think commands are sent to the chopsticks? Radio, cable?
I believe the chopsticks are probably communicating with the boosters to some degree. Like it's actually communicating with Stage 0 pretty much at all times. So, I mean, most of the actual controls for that structure go up through the comms system inside of the tower. But as far as the communication, that's kind of like a relay, essentially.
Yeah, for sure. Final question. I know you want to get out there. You're itching to get out there and observe. I think the simple answer to this question is go watch Ryan Hansen's video. From James Wilson, why just 2 catch points? Would not more be better for a catch if things don't line up right?
I don't know. Tough to answer that one. I think that the design is really good. Having more catch points introduces more points of failure. So I don't know. I think with the way they have it designed, I can't really imagine there being more than 2 catch points. So I'm not really sure how that would work.
I think some of it goes back to just Elon's motto and how he thinks and how things are designed. Less parts, better. And having more catch points makes for more weight, and they have been so accurate with Falcon 9 in their landings. I'm sure they got a little more data than we can even think of on direction, roll, and how they land, that they were just too confident that they can do it. They don't need more than 2, and it's less parts.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, that's all I got.
Awesome. Hate to cut this show short today, but as Joe said, I definitely want to get out to Starbase and actually, before the sun goes down and get some good images and just, be a part of the vibe. So I'm not sure when the post-launch show that we'll do is, possibly as early as Monday. I'm not sure. Kind of depends on everybody's availability. But yeah, be on the lookout for Mauricio's post-launch flyover, and hopefully we have some great things to talk about after the launch, and it's not a sad discussion. I personally rate the chances pretty high. I would say like 85% chance of success. I'm an optimistic person, so yeah, that's my opinion. But yeah, I'm really excited and can't wait to be on the next episode and talk about the post-launch. In the meantime, I will go ahead and sign off. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And thanks to everybody who donated as well, because it's really helpful for helping Mauricio get up there and do these flyovers every week, because they most definitely are not cheap. So yeah, thank you to everybody who supported the channel and everybody who gave us a thumbs up. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it off to Todd.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's kind of last minute for me. I'm glad I was available to do this. It's always fun. Zach, I hope you have an amazing time, even though I am so jealous and thinking very dirty faces at you. Yeah, I'm not happy that I'm not there, but I'm glad you made it. Have a great time. Everybody who is gifted, make sure you link up your Discord to your YouTube account so that you can be here for tomorrow's show and tell, because I believe we're going to have a show and tell after the flight. And if you are not a member, I highly suggest right now is the best time to do it, so you can be here tomorrow and catch up all the pictures. If you're like I used to be, and I'd be pointing at the corner of the screen yelling, "What about that? What's that? What's that?" Well, you can do that in the show and tell. You get your voice is heard, your questions are heard. Everybody gets to talk. Everybody gets to go over it. It's a lot of fun. And just make sure you're there for tomorrow's. It's going to be an amazing one. To you all who is there, have a great time, enjoy, and everybody else, take care, and we will talk to you soon. Head over to Lawrence there.
Thanks, Todd. And thank you, Zach, for hosting another great episode. Thank you to all of our supporters, Patreon, YouTube. Thank you to all the content providers out there for giving us these great views. Especially thank you, Mauricio, for being able to pull off these amazing flights. And thank you, Astro Joe, for always giving us the best questions.
You bet. Thanks, Darth. Appreciate your time. You as well, Todd. You as well, Zach. Always great to share a stream with you guys. And I don't have much of anything else to say. I don't need to repeat your sentiments, but I want to thank chat, all the awesome gifters and donators, Emlyn for turning the knobs and pushing the buttons. I'm going to say most engines cut off, hot staging confirmed, launch director, go for catch. Love you, bye.